because I think, to paraphrase him, I was the only person in the world that has known art as long as yeah. And that's rather unique. So I started to think about how I would do this, and I thought, well, I've got to think of stories, but that's a long time ago. I don't know about you guys, but when you start thinking that far back, you really know what happened. So I'm going to put in a disclaimer right away that my stories, I'm sort of an in-the-moment guy, and my stories might be, I think they're all true, but the embellishment has to come from Art because he's got a better memory. So I asked him after, that's my disclaimer. Then, about 2 weeks ago, Joy was looking at the paper. She just about fell off the chair laughing. So what are you laughing at? She said, well, look at this cartoon. It's Baby Blues. Dad, he's talking to his dad, the little guy. Dad, I need to write about our favorite childhood memory, your favorite childhood memory. And it's the school paper. Dad says, well, the son says, somewhere, where shall I begin? The little guy says, start in the middle. Your stories are terribly rambling. and he says, well, back in 1987. So my story starts in 1928, when Mom and Dad got married in May 12th. A year and a day later, along came Art, and a year and 7 months after that, I came along, and then that was the start of the Big Depression. But I'll tell you, whatever the Big Depression was, our childhood, in my mind, and with my brother Art, was just a great time. We had marvelous time. We were first down by the beaches in Blantyre, and I don't remember much about that. You'll have to ask Art about that. But in 1936, we moved to Leaside, which then was a little town outside of Toronto. There wasn't even the bridge across the Don Valley, so it was out there. We were in a rented house on Hannah Road. The Bethesda School was about eight classrooms, I think. And I do remember in those days, and early, we moved to 48 Southern Drive in 1939-40. And what I remember on Saturday mornings, Baba Fisher, that's my mom's father, a great-great-grandfather to many of you, and great-great-great. There's some pictures over there afterwards you might want to go look. But I remember he would come around, pick Art and I up, and he was a carpenter and construction guy. And he would take us down to his shop on, can't remember where, and it was near the farmer's market. And we'd go into the shop and let us fool around with the tools. And I remember lathes and drill presses and shavings on the floor. Great memories. And then he'd take Art and I over to the farmer's market in Toronto, and we'd wander around there. And he would always come back. When we got back home, he'd tell Mom, oh, by the way, we picked up a puppy, which he never did. But it was always the story that he was going to bring back a puppy for Art and I. And so then, moving on from there, I remember a lot about, I was sick a lot, and I remember whenever I went out to play, Big Bro was there to protect me from any bully that came around. He's always been my big brother, and we, as I say, we had some marvelous times in those days. I remember cottages. Mom and Dad would rent cottages. We would go up every summer, and Dad worked, seemed all the time, but he'd come up for a weekend vacation, and we'd be up there for 2 weeks to 4 weeks, have marvelous times. But the car trips, I remember one car trip to my Aunt Gladys's cottage. Art says it was Cumbermere, and I'm not sure where that is, but I remember going through towns, through Peterborough and on up, and it seemed like we would always get a flat tire or the fuel pump would go and we'd stop at a Canadian Tire store. And I remember thinking, and Art always loved cars, so he knew what was going on. I was just sort of along for the ride. But I remember thinking, wonder what happens to families that don't have a father working for Canadian Tire. And those days, the cars really didn't operate like now. But then, moving on, the early, let's see, I think it was 1943, Art was a 43 when you went away to the farm this summer. You were about 14 or 15. Anyway, that's when Art became real big brother. Because I was a pipsqueak. I was 5'6". He went away that summer, he came back, he was 6 foot plus. And I thought, oh my God, he was, and he loved farm work too. And I didn't see him much that summer at all. He came back, it was 6 foot plus, and that's, I think, where all these tall folks come around the room. And back to, I've got some little cards here just to keep me. I told you from the cartoon that I'd wandered. But then 45 was the end of World War II, and I remember I was really quite relieved. I don't know how Art felt, but I was worried about my big brother having to get conscripted, get into the war, and thank goodness that stopped. But he then went away to Jarvis Collegiate because Leaside High was not built at that time. So I was a year behind him, and so we sort of became a little bit apart. But I remember the thing that held us together was scouting. He and I were in scouts together and rovers together, and we camped. The camps were great. We were canoeing. There was one famous winter camp. We decided we had to get up to, I think, around Orangeville, Hockley Valley. And it was going to be a winter camp that we really started from scratch. We did great stuff. We cut branches from pine trees and made mattresses, no ground sheets. It was the longest night of our lives. And so again, the cottages, by that time I guess we went to Drag Lake up in Halliburton every year, and that was great fun. By this time, Art, who was, as I said, always interested in cars, he must have got his license when he was 16. But then, I think, a year or so later, maybe 18, he was an Eaton's delivery driver. Well, I could remember, again, thinking, oh my goodness, my big brother, quite a driver. And thinking back, I think that maybe even Art could have given Glenn a great run on the Porsche race track. We didn't have a Porsche, but he had Dad's car. I think Art was a 37, big, heavy 37 Oldsmobile. We'd be, you couldn't get cars through the Second World War, of course, but he'd be driving us out to ski trips. Everybody else would be stuck, and he'd just wheel that thing around, and we'd push and get everybody out and back home again. And I thought he was the greatest driver in the world. Much different than what you probably think of him driving sedately along the country roads now. But then, as I say, the thing that sort of glued us together in those days were the rovers and the scouting. And we even built, one memory that came back, Art and I and the rest of the rover crew and a couple of dads, our dad, we built a rover den, which was about a 12 by 20 cabin in a nearby park. And how in the world anybody got permission to do that, I don't know. But when we were back a few years ago, it was still there. And I think about Well, then he went off to work. I went to U of T and went west in 1954. So we started our separate lives. Then I heard about Brian and about Rick and about Sandra, and then bring us back right up to 1969 when Joy and I and our three came back, and that was 50 years ago, and you know what happened 50 years ago. So the Joy and I and our three kids got together with Art and Norma and the 6 Joneses. It was after their marriage. We met at Morrison Lake, and that was when I can remember Norma being the organizer for all 9 Joy Jones kids. Glenn was 15, Gordon, our youngest, was 6, and all of the others in between. She organized them to help in the kitchen, and boy, our kids learned that Norma could cook. And every time that we ever came back, and they came back occasionally separate from Indonesia, and Norma and Art would host them up at the cottage, and Norma would cook. We still remember. By the way, they all say hi. But in summary, I can't speak as eloquently as Glenn and Sandy about it, but I really respect Big Bro. He's all of those words: integrity, honesty, wonderful guy, wonderful human being, and I love you both. Thank you very much.